And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his biography, and best hits. Born in Florida in 1970, Mehldau grew up in a household full of music, soaking in classical giants like Bach and Beethoven, while also listening to jazz legends Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, and McCoy Tyner. His early curiosity and dedication would shape a style that's both intellectually rigorous and deeply emotional. Meldau's career took off with his debut, introducing Brad Mehldau in 1995, but it was Art of the Trio series, volumes 3, 4, and 5, that truly cemented his reputation. Alongside bassist Larry Grenadier and drummer George Rossi, he explored melody, rhythm, and harmony in ways that redefined the modern jazz trio, even weaving in contemporary songs from Nick Drake to Radiohead. Albums like Largo, The Day Is Done, and Highway Rider pushed boundaries even further, incorporating electronic textures, orchestration, and cinematic scope. From intimate ballads to ambitious compositions, Meldau shows us that jazz is alive, evolving, and endlessly expressing. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his life and times, and best hits. During this summer, we're going to be talking about his biography. So if you ever marveled at a jazz trio that seems to think as one, stretches time without stretching tension, or turns a pop song into a profound musical conversation, you've already encountered Meldau's music. Born in Florida in 1970, Brad grew up in a household infused with music. Though his parents weren't professional musicians, the sounds of piano, records, and performance were everywhere. Brad started playing piano young, not for immediate virtuosity, but out of curiosity, an eagerness to listen, to connect deeply with the sound. By his teenage years, he was absorbing everything from the classical masters, Bach and Beethoven, to rock, pop, and of course, jazz legends like Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, and McCoy Tyner. This mix would later define his style, intellectually rigorous but emotionally resonant. After formal studies at the New School in New York, Meldau quickly made his mark on the vibrant 1990s jazz scene. What set him apart wasn't just his technical skills, it was the ability to make every note feel meaningful, every improvisation feel like storytelling. What set him apart wasn't just his technical skill, it was the ability to make every note feel meaningful, every improvisation feel like storytelling. In 1995, he released his debut, introducing Brad Mehldau. Right away, it showcased his approach, thoughtful interpretations of standards, a careful attention to melody. Mehldau wasn't just playing, he was conversing through the piano. But it was the Art of the Trio series, volumes 3, 4, and 5, released between 1998 and 2001, that cemented his place in the jazz pantheon. Alongside bassist Larry Grenadier and drummer George Rossi, Mehldau transformed the trio into a laboratory of rhythm, harmony, and melody. Swing, stretch time, and contemporary songs from Nick Drake to Radiohead all found their place in his explorations. Here, Mehldau was more than just a pianist, he was a thinker, a composer, and a storyteller. As his career progressed, Mehldau embraced new textures and forms. Largo, released in 2002, brought electronic textures, loops, and studio experimentation unusual for jazz at the time, without ever losing improvisation scope. Albums like The Day Is Done, Live in Tokyo, and Blues and Ballads revealed a more introspective side, crafting music of lyrical beauty and emotional transparency. By the 2010s, Meldau wasn't just a trio pianist but a fully realized composer. Highway Rider, released in 2010, incorporated orchestra, voice, and cinematic forms. Ode, released in 2012, reaffirmed his compositional mastery while returning to the trio intimacy. Seymour Reed's The Constitution, released in 2018, engaged with political and social themes. And Jacob's Ladder, released in 2022, fused jazz and progressive rock in innovative ways. Meldau proved he would never settle, always evolving, always curious. What makes Brad Mehldau remarkable is more than just mastery of technique. It's a balance of intellect, emotion, and fearless risk-taking. He listens as much as he plays, interprets as much as he improvises, and challenges both himself and his listeners. And while his music can feel cerebral, it never loses its heart. You feel the thought, but you also feel the soul. So for first-time listeners, start with the Art of the Trio series, where Meldau's voice shines fully. From there, explore Largo, The Day Is Done, and onward to his later works, where his sonic universe expands but the intimacy remains. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his biography, and best hits. Now it's time for some trending music news. So if you're craving something daring and boundary-pushing, check this out. The Chord at Versailles is making waves with their debut single A Walk, reimagining Taiko through a live jazz lens. Pianist Joel Pearson and producer Eric Palmquist, whose credits include Billie Eilish, Half Alive, and Tate McRae, have been cooking up acoustic electronica for an year. Their goal: take the pulse and precision of electronic dance music and merge it with the risk, improvisation, and human touch of jazz. Joining them, Sam Binney on bass and John Hadfield on drums transform these digital soundscapes into full-bodied acoustic energy, creating music that's alive, unpredictable, and emotionally rich. Each track is a canvas open to experimentation and sonic reinvention. Acoustic electronica also reinterprets works by Squarepusher, Skrillex, Fred Again, and John Hopkins. So if you like electronics or jazz, or you just want to hear genres collide brilliantly, A Walk is your next must-hear track. And that was some trendy music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We are going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Brad Mehldau's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his biography, and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. So if you want to understand how the modern jazz trio learned to breathe, stretch, and think differently, you start with Brad Mehldau. So we're going to be talking about the foundation years, the records where Mehldau quietly revived the piano trio from the inside out. So we start in 1995 with introducing Brad Mehldau. You hear Bill Evans in the touch, but also a restless mind at work. Mehldau plays like he's thinking out loud, reshaping standards with vulnerability and warmth. Then comes Art of the Trio Volume 3 songs, The Game Changer. With Larry Grenadier and George Rossi, the trio moves as one organism. Jazz standards sit alongside Nick Drake, not as novelty but as philosophy. This album shows you how to listen to modern jazz, slowly, patiently. Volume 4, Back at the Vanguard, raises the stakes, live, risky, exploratory. And Volume 5, Progression, seals it, confidence, clarity, and forward motion. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his biography, and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. So when we talk about Brad Mehldau, we often start with the piano trio, the conversational, elastic format he helped redefine in the late 90s. But now we're going to focus on a different arc, a stretch of albums where Mehldau deliberately steps outside expectations, reshaping his sound, his process, even the role of a jazz pianist. 4 records in particular tell this story: Largo, Day Is Done, Live in Tokyo, and Blues and Ballads. Let's begin with Largo, released in 2002. This was a shock to the system at the time. Mehldau, known for his acoustic trio intimacy, suddenly embraces layered percussion, chamber-style horns, studio textures, and pop and rock influences, all under the production guidance of John Bryan. This isn't fusion in the traditional sense, it's more like a cinematic reimagining of what jazz piano could inhabit. You hear it immediately: drum loops sit next to lyrical piano lines, woodwinds color the harmony, and then there's that audacious cover of Radiohead's Paranoid Android. Mehldau doesn't jazz it up, he rethinks it structurally and emotionally. Tracks like When It Rains feel suspended in atmosphere, while other moments lock into grooves that would have felt forbidden in jazz circles at the time. Largo isn't about abandoning jazz, it's about retracting it through a broader musical consciousness. So this album opened doors not just for Mehldau, but for an entire generation of jazz musicians willing to engage modern production without sacrificing depth. Fast forward to Day Is Done in 2005, and we are back in the trio, but it's a new trio energy. Jeff Ballard is now on drums alongside Larry Grenadier. The chemistry feels restless, elastic, alive. The album opens with a bold reworking of Radiohead's Knives Out, immediately signaling that this isn't a conservative statement. Mehldau continues to reinterpret contemporary songwriters. Nick Drake's Day Is Done becomes a centerpiece, but the real story here is interaction. This record breathes, it surges forward, then pulls back into moments of quiet dialogue. Mehldau stretches harmonic ideas without losing emotional clarity. Extended improvisations unfold naturally, never feeling academic. Day Is Done captures that rare balance between intensity and intimacy, music that challenges the ear while still inviting the listener inside. It's one of those albums that reminds you jazz can be both thoughtful and unpredictable at the same time. Then comes Live in Tokyo, released in 2004 but recorded the year before. And here, everything is stripped bare. Solo piano, no safety net, no rhythmic cushion, just Mehldau, the instrument, and time itself. This album is often called introspective, but it's also incredibly bold. What stands out is Mehldau's control of time and memory. He weaves classical phrasing, jazz harmony, even rock-inflected sensibilities into long unfolding improvisations. Phrases stretch until they almost dissolve, then snap back into focus. There's emotional vulnerability here, but also intellectual rigor. Live in Tokyo feels less like a performance and more like an invitation. The listener is inside the room, inside the thinking process. It's a masterclass in presence. Finally, we land on Blues and Ballads from 2016, where Mehldau returns once again to the trio with Grenadier and Ballard, but now with the perspective of a mature artist fully at ease with his voice. This album focuses on standards and blues-inflected material. The brilliance lies in its restraint. Space becomes a compulsional tool. The silencers carry weight. Mehldau reinterprets familiar material with subtle harmonic shifts that feel revelatory rather than flashy. Each track unfolds like a short story, compact, emotionally resonant, and deeply human. Taken together, these 4 albums tell us a powerful story. They show Brad Mehldau refusing to be boxed in, moving outward with Largo, re-energizing the trio on A Day Is Done, turning inward on Live in Tokyo, and finding profound depth in the simplicity of Blues and Ballads. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Brad Mehldau, his biography, and best hits. Now it's time for some trending music news. So Miami, mark those calendars. The South Beach Jazz Festival is hitting a major milestone, celebrating 10 years of world-class music in Miami Beach, January 8 through 11, 2026. 4 days, multiple venues, Grammy winners, global stars, and yes, plenty of free shows. Leading the celebration is 3-time Grammy-winning Spanish Harlem Orchestra, bringing their high-octane Latin jazz sound to the Miami Beach bandstand on Saturday, January 10th, joined by trumpeter 18 Charles. Tickets start at $42.50 and Miami Beach residents score 20% off with code MB20. The festival kicks off Thursday at the Finer Theatre with Grammy winner John Pizzarelli and his tribute Dear Mr. Bennett. Friday heats up with a Louis Armstrong deep dive from historian Ricky Riccardi, followed by a free outdoor concert from Stephen Bernstein's Millennium Territory Orchestra Under the Stars. Saturday brings family vibes with the Jazz for Tomorrow student stage, and Sunday wraps it all up with 9 straight hours of free music on Lincoln Road, ending with special guest Nessa Torres. So 10 years strong, jazz, community and Miami Beach all in one group. And there was some trendy music news on the weekend jazz update with Joshua Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Brad Mehldau's best albums of all time. Stay tuned.